let's go make our little goes to as a quilt. But first, always remember to share this so it was saved to your profile and you can find it when you're looking for it again later. I started with 49 squares that are going to be my back and 49 squares that are going to be my front. My squares are 5 inches by 5 inches. And then I have 2 layers of flannel to go in between each one. So that's 98 pieces of 5 by 5 inch flannel. You can use batting or something else. If you use your batting, cut it a little smaller so it's not hairy hanging out of the edges. I have a ton of scrap flannel, so that's what I'm using. You'll notice some of mine have designs on them, and I don't care. But you use whatever flannel you have or whatever you can get. The first thing I'm going to do is take 1 square that's going to be my back. I'm going to lay it pretty side down. I'm going to take 2 pieces of flannel or batting, whatever you're putting in between yours, and lay it right on top of it. And then I'm going to take one of my front squares and I'm going to lay that pretty side up. So you have the pretty side on the outside of both sides. Now I'm going to sew an X across this. I'm going to back stitch when I start and when I stop. I'm going to chain piece mine. And I know lots of people don't backstitch when they chain piece, but y'all, my grandma scared me. She terrified me. She told me that if I did not backstitch, my stuff would fall apart. So if you're asking me, the answer is always yes. I'm gonna sew all 49 of my squares together, and then we'll start putting our rows together. Our quilt is 7 across by 7 down, which is 49. And I have tons of scrap flannel because when the little ladies were little, all they would sleep with were flannel blankets, and now they're outgrowing those. So I've cut them up and I'm using them in all kinds of sentimental projects, including this one. Okay, so one of 2 things has happened. Either you already laid your quilt out to make sure that you like the way the top of it looks, or you're like me and you just sewed a whole bunch of Halloween squares. Mine are from a charm pack plus a few, and I knew I wanted to use all of these pieces, so I just went on and sewed all of mine, and I'm going to make it work. Now we're going to lay out the first 2 rows. And I'm just like y'all, the hardest part for me is deciding what it looks like. What piece of fabric goes where. But unlike y'all, I know that when I spend all this time on it right now, and after I finish it, when my family's using it and I'm using it, no one's looking at the placement of the fabric. Okay, y'all can see most of this. I have my first 2 rows laid out. Now, what I'm gonna do is pick them up. I'm gonna pick up 1 row and then the second row. I know that I like the way that they look, so we're just gonna pick up the first 2 pieces. I'm gonna pick up this one and this one. Now, I have the same fabric on all of the backs of all of my squares, so I know that's the back of it. We want to put the backs together, so we have pretty side on the outside and pretty side on the outside. We're going to sew this with a straight stitch, and I am going to sew a little wider than a 1/4 inch seam, probably 5/8 or so, because after we sew this together, then we're going to clip it, and I want to make sure that I have enough space to clip it without clipping my seams. So we're going to put it underneath here. We're going to sew this, straight stitch, back stitching when we start and when we stop. Because my grandma said so. I've sewn these 2 together. Do you see that? And you want this raw edge on the front of your quilt, or maybe not. That's totally up to you. But I want mine on the front of mine. So the raw edge is on the front. Then I'm going to pick up the next one. And I'm going to lay them back sides together, pretty side on the outside, and I'm going to sew that, and then I'm going to continue until I finish this row, and then I'm going to sew that row, and then we're going to sew our rows together. Now, I've chosen to use cotton fabric on the front and the back of mine and flannel on the inside, but you can use flannel on the front and back, or you can use batting on the inside. But if you use polyester batting, be sure to cut your polyester batting about 1 inch smaller all the way around. So instead of a 5 by 5 square, you would have a 4 by 4 square, because you don't want all that hairy hanging out whenever you're clipping it. Okay, we've sewn 2 rows together. Now we're going to pick up our rows and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to place them back sides together, pretty side fabric on the outside of both sides. Line your seams up. You want this seam and so on to match. And we're just going to sew right here. Just like we sewed them together, we're going to sew that straight stitch, back stitching when you start and when you stop. If you've never sewn before, this rag quilt or any rag quilt is a perfect beginner project. Okay, here we are. But I picked it up and then I couldn't remember where I decided everything went. So I'm going to do those just like we did the others. I'm going to lay them back sides together and I'm gonna sew right here. I sewed 5 rows together, and then I sewed 2 rows together, and then I sewed the 5 and 2 rows together to have 7 rows. We have to go all the way around the complete outside of our quilt with a stitch. Same, 1/4 inch, 5/8, 1/2 inch, something that you have a little bit of space because you're gonna clip all these seams. Sew all the way around with a straight stitch, back stitching when you start and when you stop. So now I've sewn all of my rows together, and I'm going around and sewing 1 seam all the way around because I'm going to come back and clip about every 1/2 inch so that when I wash it, it will fray and be oh so pretty. I have this pair of Fiskars spring action shears that are made for this, and they're kind of amazing. But you can use regular scissors if you don't have these, but these are really good if you do have them. Now you're going to clip all the way around the entire outside of this blanket, and then you're going to clip all of the seams on the inside. So you're going to go all the way around the outside, and then you're going to go up and down every seam on the inside. And I'm clipping mine, can you see that? About a 1/2 inch, but you can clip it as close together as you want. You clip yours, and I'm going to clip mine. These spring action shears are linked in both my Walmart and my Amazon storefront. That's both linked in the caption if you're looking for them, or use regular scissors or whatever your favorite pair of clipping scissors are. And if you have something different than these that you love, drop it in the comments. We all want to know the secrets. I've seen all the ideas of how to hold your ghost. This is a paper towel holder from the Dollar Tree. This is a styrofoam ball from Hobby Lobby. This is not my original idea. I saw it somewhere else, but I thought it was genius. Okay, I've clipped it. I've not washed it yet. It's gonna lay a little smoother, freer after it's washed, but this is what we have. Now we have to decide where we want our eyes. I had really big eyes, but now I'm thinking I want smaller eyes. Isn't he so cute? So I'm going to sew his eyes on. I'm just going to straight stitch around both of his eyes. Now that is going to make it fray, but the whole blanket is fraying, and it's going to be absolutely precious. If you don't want your eyes to fray, you can do it with a zigzag stitch. I did choose to put my eyes inside of one block instead of trying to go over some of those seams because the seams are so hefty. Dun dun dun! Isn't he precious? And he is so cute with the book, The Little Ghost Who Was a Quilt. I'm gonna go wash mine so he will rag nice and pretty, and then I will be sure to show you what he looks like. But y'all, email me photos of yours. I want to see what you make. Email your projects to hometownquiltcompany@gmail.com. My name is Tammy. I'm your favorite sewing teacher, and I would love for you to come sew with me.